Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today I have a message for you, and this is really a warning to somebody out there. So it's not a coincidence that you're on this channel. It's not a coincidence that you're listening to this message right now. So today's message is all around burnout. So if you've been feeling kind of burned out, whether it's with your job, as a parent, maybe just in life with all the responsibilities and maybe a busy schedule, whatever it happens to be for you, this message is for you. So I want to talk about it here because this really is a warning. You can end up in a space that can be extremely unhealthy to the point where the body doesn't even want to keep going. So I want to talk to you about that here today. And I know that I worked for many years in the mental health field. And even as a mental health worker, I would oftentimes go to meetings and things where they would talk about burnout. And it was quite irritating to go to some of these meetings because of the solutions or some of the suggestions that they would have. And I want to share with you that in this video, it's going to be a little bit different than that. So in these meetings, oftentimes they would talk about very kind of surface level things that were soothing but not truly restorative. So things like take a bath, take a bubble bath, light a candle for yourself, take a deep breath, little things like that. And while I don't want to dismiss those things because they are soothing in a way, when our nervous system is so pretty much exhausted at that point, some of these soothing things can help a little bit, but they really don't get to the root of the issue. And that's what I want to talk about here today. See, when we're burned out, we're truly burned out because we're giving from an empty space. We've gotten to kind of empty. And so today's message came through after we were feeding a fire the other day, and I got the image of what I needed to share with someone here today. So it's been getting a little bit colder here where I live, and there was maybe 2 nights that we actually got to use the fireplace. So we used the actual fireplace to heat our home. And so we chopped our wood, we got all of that stuff together, and we started to feed the fire. And it was really nice, it was nice and toasty. I love the smell of a fire and the sound of a crackling fire as well. But then after a while, we got busy with some other things. And what I noticed was suddenly it was cold in the house again. And what was going on is if we don't feed that fire, if we don't put another log in, that fire goes cold. There's just nothing there anymore. So it's important to feed the fire. And so that's much like our lives. We oftentimes forget that we need to put in a log and feed the fire within us. And so today's really question is, what are you going to put into your fire? What's that log that you're going to put in? What is it going to be that you need for yourself right now? And so going a little bit deeper than just a bath, just a candle, than just a deep breath. What is that thing that you truly need to kind of restore rather than soothe yourself right now? What is actually going to keep the house warm and going? So that's the question here today. And I know that, I had been in situations that were very, very draining. And I got burned out a couple of times that I can think of in my life, probably a handful of times, where it became almost very unhealthy. So for some time, I can remember there was a job that I had, and it really was demanding a lot of me. Looking back now, I can see how it was more of a toxic workplace. And because of this, there was nothing kind of being added to that fire. There was no logs being put in. It was just everything was taking. The clients were taking from me. The management was taking from me. My time was taken from me. Everything was just taking. And there was nothing actually coming in for me. So because of that, it became so extremely draining that I became very burned out. And I'm someone that can pretty much stay pretty calm, pretty patient, almost stoic a lot of times in situations. And, I worked with lots of little kids, people with mental health issues, all of that. And I can always, manage my emotions and stay grounded. But at this time, I was so burned out and just so drained completely that I can think of 2 times where I broke down crying, one of which in front of my manager, because it was just so much. And so you might find yourself in a situation like this where you've just kind of, felt so burned out that you might find yourself crying alone or crying with someone, whatever it is, but you find yourself at that point. And if you find yourself at that point, let me just confirm to you that is burnout. That's complete burnout. And at that point is when you start to have to look at, what can I change here? What can I add to this fire? What can I add as a log, whatever, to replenish myself, to restore myself in this situation? And there will be some situations that there just isn't much you can do. And for me, that was the case in this particular job. And I had to find the strength and the courage and the self-love to walk away from that job and find something that was healthier. Now, that might not be the case for everyone. You may just need to create more of a balance in your work-life, situation. Other times I can think about, being a parent. And it's been a long time since I've had a young child, but I can remember, when my daughter was a baby, a toddler, even preschool age, it could be quite draining. And it seemed like I was giving and giving and giving, but I wasn't taking care of myself enough. And so I would become more irritable. I would, kind of not be in the moment. So looking back now, I kind of, in a way, feel sad about those times and thinking that, if I had known what I know now, I would probably had been more in the moment. And so I wish this for every parent, to really recognize when they are getting to that burned out state and take care of themselves so that they can really, be fully there as a parent in these very kind of fleeting times, because it really goes by quickly. And so for me in those times, it could be quite hard. And so those are the times where we have to stay, where can we ask for help? Where can we do something to restore ourselves in that time when someone is helping? And so taking care of ourselves is very, very important. So you could be burned out at work as a parent. You could be burned out as a wife, husband, spouse, as a family member in a home. One of the things that I noticed about myself, and I think I'm not the only one, is that oftentimes, like in a household, there'll be someone that'll say, and it could be your spouse, it could be a parent, whoever, they'll walk in and say, I lost this thing. I wonder where I left it. Or, we need to clean the walls, or we need to do this. And it's just little comments people make. Doesn't mean that they're directed at you and that you are responsible for them, but I would oftentimes take it to be my responsibility. If I heard somebody had lost something, I would begin looking for it. If I heard, that something needed to get done, I would take the responsibility to get it done. Now, later on, now I've found out that that's not my responsibility. If someone loses something, especially if they lost something, it's their responsibility. They're intelligent people. They can look for it just as well as I can look for it. So kind of leaving those responsibilities to the people it belongs to. If there's something that needs to be done in the home, you could do it, but you could also delegate that to others in your household. You don't have to be the one to take on every single responsibility. And as you do take on every responsibility, you'll begin to get burned out, and you'll begin to notice some resentment there, because most people don't really care that you're doing all of that work. And it's important to delegate those jobs to others so that others can also take responsibility and feel the weight of what it is to do those things, so that you're not carrying the whole load. It's divided. So oftentimes we have those situations where we feel like we have to do it. We have to, do this or that. And so it's kind of letting go of that feeling that we have to do it. The other feeling that can come up and cause a lot of burnout is the feeling of feeling lazy. Like we have to do the things, or we have to stay busy throughout the day. Otherwise we are lazy. And, we can oftentimes get into that mentality when we're doing too much and it just naturally happens. Or we come from a home, or we come from a background where we were seen as lazy or unworthy in some way if we weren't doing. We were taught to always be doing. But honestly, our bodies, our soul, everything about us requires rest at times. Just like the seasons change and there's seasons for rest and seasons to produce, the same thing happens with us. So it's important to take time to rest and give yourself the grace to take a nap, to take a breather, to go outside and do what you need to do for the time that you need to do it, to leave something for another day. Give yourself that grace. It's totally natural, and it does not mean that you are lazy. The more that you do these things and allow the rest for yourself, the more that you will notice that you'll have more energy and better spirits to do the things when you have to do them. So it's important to look at that. The other part of being burned out is sometimes over caring. And it kind of goes along with what I talked about earlier. But I know that for myself, many years I worked in social work and mental health and helping communities of people that didn't speak English and things like that. So oftentimes I would over care, and I would like do everything for a client or do everything for someone in my life, thinking that I was helping them. Later to find out they were not grateful, or they never learned to care for themselves, so I had to continue doing it. It's important to allow that person, even if you think they have a deficit in some way, to try. Even if you think like they can't speak the language or something like that, you'd be surprised how much they can do if you allow them to, if you give them the task and just expect them to do it. So I kind of learned that from observing other counselors and other social workers and stuff like that. I would notice that they weren't helping their clients quite as much as I did. They weren't making the phone calls and doing everything for the client. They would oftentimes give them referrals and say, hey, these are the places, and this is how you get help, and go get help. And although I found that kind of cold, later on I learned as I moved further in my profession that you do have to give them the resources and allow them to do it. You really do kind of not really help them a whole lot when you do it. It's like enabling someone. You're not really teaching them how to do it. You're doing it for them. Just like a child, if you did everything for them and you never showed them how to do it, then you'd be stuck there doing it forever, and that child would be stunted in that way. So it's important to, even if you feel like you're over caring, to step back a little bit and allow others to do it. They're capable to do it. And so that's the realization that's important to know. And so these are some of the things that I wish that, I had been, kind of told about when we would do these kind of meetings and things when I was working in mental health and social work. Because, these are the things that are important, and allow more space for rest. If your clients, if the people in your life are able to be more independent and do more of the things themselves, even your child, allowing them to clean up after themselves, allowing them to pick out their clothes or whatever, allows you more time to do the things that you truly need to do to recharge, to restore. And without that, you're stuck doing 1,000,001 tasks and nothing is coming back in, and it's quite hard. So rest comes in different ways. There's physical rest, actually taking time to make sure you're getting the 8 hours of sleep that you need. And some people need more and some people need less. Actually taking the time to take a nap or whatever if you need it. Then comes mental rest, really unplugging sometimes from some of these devices. If we're always attached to our phone and that's where we get emails from work, or maybe we have our own business, then we're never really leaving work behind, and our mental ability and everything is still caught up in like we're working when we're not, but we are. So really kind of creating boundaries or shutting things off, or saying I'm not going to touch these apps, or I'm not going to answer emails past 6 or whatever, phone calls. Creating boundaries so that you could have mental rest. If you're someone that's always reading, let's say, self-help books or watching, self-help type videos or things like that, putting that aside for a moment and really just having some time where you have the mental rest of not trying to fix yourself or fix anything else, just kind of enjoying. So picking books that are fun, that you truly want to read. They're not for any educational or attainment purpose. Same thing with videos and things that you watch. The other thing is emotional rest. Again, sometimes if we're, really tied emotionally to someone that seems to need our help. Or I know I've had friends that, I call them up, and unfortunately, the truth is most of the times they're asking for advice, or it's all about them. Kind of cutting that off a little bit and allowing yourself some emotional space to those things that are emotionally healthy for you, creating emotional boundaries where you can express yourself emotionally or be at peace, essentially. The other thing is creative rest. You know, especially if you have a job where you're very creative in your job, it's important to take time away from that, even though you're being creative, to either not be creative or just be creative for you. So not for your job, not for something that's going to make money, but something just for you. So doing creativity in a way that's going to really nourish you, as if you're taking time for you and it's not your jobs, because those lines can get blurred and the burnout will still happen, even though it seems like you're doing creative, fun things. Another thing is spiritual rest. Spirituality can bring us a lot of peace, but when we see spirituality as something that we have to do, like we have to meditate 2 hours, or we have to do this thing, or we have to watch this or read this book for this long, or do this, it becomes something that's not very restful or peaceful. So resting in spirituality would be something like praying, giving it to God, releasing it, you know, doing those things that actually nourish you and bring something back to you. So those are the main things that you have to look for as far as rest. And, you know, what can you drop in your life is another question that I kind of want to leave you here with. You know, oftentimes with some of the things I talked about, it's like we're trying to hold the whole world together. We're trying to do everything for our clients, our business, everything for our children, our family, everything for our friends, everything for, you know, coworkers, whoever. And it's like we're trying to hold the whole world together and do everything everywhere. But you know, you don't have to hold the whole world together. It actually will still go on even if you take a rest. And this warning really can, and I don't want it to be scary, but there was a time I did so much that I ended up in the hospital. I had high blood pressure. It was, no one could figure out why. And later come to find out, a lot of it had to do with being burned out, with doing too much. And you see, when I was in the hospital, I couldn't do anything. I couldn't go pick up my daughter from school. I couldn't make dinner. I was stuck in a room in a hospital. But yet life still went on. My husband was able to cook. My husband picked up my daughter. Others were able to help in different ways. They were able to take care of themselves. The whole world did not fall apart. But I had to land in a hospital to realize that. And I don't want that for you. I don't want you to have to realize it in that way. So I hope that today's message, you know, sheds some light on how to, you know, really identify burnout and what are some things that you can do. So what is that log that you're going to put in your fireplace today? What are you going to put in today? That is the question that I leave you with. I hope that this message found you well. I hope that it resonated with you. If you got something out of it, please share this message with others, and I will catch you on our next video. I love you all.